So people, it's time for another cheeky little transition tutorial, and this time round we are doing the pencil on the storyboard, flicking onto our playhead on our timeline, then dumping our shot on our timeline. You lot were like hounding me for this one. Like, I got so many DMs about this particular transition, so I thought, you know what mate, I'm a bit like, you know, Postman Pat. You lot send in the order, I'm gonna deliver the package, mate. What's going on, you lot? I hope you're all sweet. Yeah, man, I'm gonna do this on Premiere Pro. However, DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut, Vegas, it's all the same thing, mate. It's the exact same, you know, method. So hold your horses, calm down, it'll all be fine. So this transition is super simple. It's essentially an in-camera transition. So if I show you the 3 shots completely raw separately, they are just really simple shots, nothing too crazy about them. But when they're all glued together, just stuck together, they look great, and the transition kind of works on its own. So the first shot is simply just following the pencil handheld. Camera comes over, boom, whip pan to the right. Obviously we've got a lot of motion blur in there. Motion blur really helps hide cuts, especially when both shots that are cut together have got it. So this will work really nicely with our second shot. The next shot is simply just the playhead running along the timeline. I've actually sped them up a little bit so that they're a little bit faster and they feel a little bit more like glitchy and chaotic, because that's what I wanted, you know, the whole scene to kind of feel like. And I've actually doubled them up because the first one wasn't long enough. And I actually liked how the playhead like jumped back. So yeah, man, it just worked for the story and worked for the whole transition thing that I was trying to do. And then the very final shot is basically a reverse or a mirror of the very first shot. You know, whip panning over to the right hand side on the timeline and just dropping the clip on the timeline. So let me stick these 3 shots together so that you can kind of get an idea of what they look like together. So when they're there, this is how they look. So it's almost, you know, almost a bit of a seamless transition without any editing. However, we want to make it look a bit like this, mate. Yes, double bloody naughty. So to get this transition, I'm going to show you how to do it. It's really simple. It's basically playing around with opacity. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this first shot right here, which is the first shot that we've got our playhead, and we're going to actually paste that. So we've got a second one. We're basically duplicating it. Now, because I've obviously got a bit of a, you know, a time remapping, I've got a bit of a speed ramp in there. I'm going to nest it just to make it a bit easier to play about with. And then I'm going to find on our first shot where we want our playhead to start. So I'm going to say about here, that's where we want to start to see our playhead. Now, I've put the playhead there. Now we're going to have to bring that opacity down to about 50 so that we can see, you know, what we're working with. Now let's bring the rotation down so that our playhead is basically in the spot that we want it to be. So there, let's see if the pencil kind of follows that line. Yeah, that looks about right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a keyframe on my rotation position and scale on that point. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to make a mask on that opacity. The mask should only really show where the pencil's been. So it's basically like following the path of the pencil almost. So the first one is almost going to be like, you know, non-existent at this point. So it's going to be somewhere around there. So at this point you can hardly even see it. I'm also going to leave a keyframe on the opacity because we're going to want to bring the opacity up as we go along, and then obviously a keyframe on the mask path. So let's go along another shot, and then we're going to have to expand. There we go. We're going to have to expand that opacity mask each time. Now you're going to notice as we kind of come out, we're going to want to level out about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to motion, and I'm going to put a keyframe that makes basically the playhead completely flat. So we should start to rotate out. There we go. We can try and make that rotate out a bit quicker if we like. No, I want to keep it a little bit further back so it's a little bit smoother. So that is already getting pretty close. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep doing our keyframes to open up this playhead. Let's open that up there. Yeah, nice. So as we go along, that playhead now opens out. But what we want to do is we want to basically turn this shot into solely our playhead following along the timeline. So let's bring that up there, and then let's start to bring these shots in. So what we can do is we can match where these shots hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to now try and like line up our playhead from the first shot to the second shot so that it looks completely seamless, you know. So this shot here, we're going to want to line up with this. So at this point, let me see if I can play around with this so that it actually fits on there and then we're seamless. Let me increase our scale a little bit. Okay, let's see how this looks. Right, so about here, this is where we're going to have to introduce this second shot. Boom. But that's a little bit of a hard cut. Even though I like it for what I want, I'm going to try and make it a bit more smooth for you lot. So let's see if we can dissolve this in. Even by one frame will probably make quite a big difference. Boom. Right, let's play that back and see how that looks. Almost. It's a little bit harsh. What I want is I don't want it to be so slow on this second frame. Boom. It just cuts in there a little bit too hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring these two underneath this and then fade this out. Let's see if that works. This tutorial's turned into a bit of a bloody experiment because I don't exactly know what I'm doing. So, oh yeah, see that's nice. It like flashes in. Boom. Right, we're getting there. It's a little bit glitchy, it's a little bit chaotic, you know, but you can, if you spend the real hours and get the hours in to make it look clean, it will work. Like the original one took me like 3 hours to get like, you know, really finessed. So I'm not expecting to get this like bang on in like 10 minutes. So, right, let's see how we're looking. Boom. Right. We're looking pretty damn close, you know. That all that needs is like a little bit of finessing and we can get that like spot on clean. Now what we're going to do is really, really simply just fade in this final shot. So all I'm going to do is go to effects. We're going to get a cross dissolve and fade in this final shot right here. That fade was a little bit long, so I'm going to shorten that off a little bit. Let's see how this looks. Boom. That is seamless as hell. Bang. I'd like that roll off, you know, a little bit nicer from like the angled line to flat. Because when we look at the original one, this is the original, like the actual sequence right here. It just rolls off a lot nicer than the original one. And as you can see, we've got a shot of an eye in there, which is simply just this shot here. If I show you this original shot, this eye shot, really, really simple eye shot there. I just thought to myself, you know what? Let me just stick that in over the top. So let me bring this in so that I can give you a good idea of how it looks. Stick this eye shot over the top and it just shows like someone watching that timeline, you know, as the playhead's going along. So it's a bit real and it feels like you're real time in the edit, like we're in it. And that was the whole point of me doing this transition. I wanted people to feel like they were in the edit with me while I was editing the video. And to achieve that, all you have to do is get that shot over the top and then just keyframe in the opacity. So as you can see here, I've masked it just so that we only see the eye in the middle. And I've just brung up the opacity. If you watch the opacity scale here, literally just, you know, come up to about maxed out at like 73% and then back down to 0 so that we lose it. And then when it plays back, boom. I think for a 10-minute transition tutorial, we done all right there. So anyway, people, thanks so much for watching. Let me know if, you know, that helped you out. And also, if you are going to do this transition for whatever reason, make sure that you tag me on it on the gram. I really enjoy like doing these tutorials and then seeing what other people do their own versions of, you know. So feel free to tag me on the G. I'm all about that. And also, what do you think of like the new, you know, home setup? Is it good? Is it not good? Do you prefer the studio? I don't know. I think I probably prefer the studio. But, you know, it's always nice to do a bit of, you know, at-home YouTubing and that. So, anyway, people, thanks so much for watching. And I'll be catching you lot in the next one, mate. Oh,